Coronsonic energy is only really starting to dissipate now. It was pretty ferocious there, and I just wasn't in the mood to engage with anyone who was anyway toxic, obnoxious, and passive aggressive. And it was immediately ghosting anyone who was, and getting rid of them completely, because these flare ups will show the true personality of what people are. And so the maggots came out in force, and the maggots were blocked and ghosted in force. So it's okay. It's starting to calm down now a bit. So it's safe for me to come out. Before I start this video, which should be a pot of T1, you can see the Super Value bag for life behind me with the produce on it. But it adds color to the proceedings, you know. But so I had a difficult, not a difficult sleep last night. And to bring your attention to a video I've just uploaded to the BR313 channel, I'll post that as a link here below in the comments pinned, of a dream I had last night that was very peculiar, and I would like your insights on it if you could go there and talk about it. And don't forget to subscribe to that channel if you're not a member. Myself and Neil MacDonald are working on a fantastic new insight into the Pendle Witch story, which will be released there. It'll be another one of our another sterling effort by the pair of us, and I hope you'll enjoy it as much as if you enjoyed and are watching Atlantis, a continent lost, an empire lost and found. And anyway, so I hope everything is okay, which is I hope you got through this Coronsonic mess, confusion, distortion via sphere safely and okay. It's a nice autumnal feel here today. It's pretty nice. So yeah, okay. Some things I want to talk about. Loads of things I want to talk about, actually. So we'll make up for stuff. The first thing is, those of you who watched the BR31 channel, 313 channel, we had a talk with Manny Grossman in Yonkers in New York. Manny's a very interesting man, and he was making some excellent videos on YouTube about the Son of Sam cult thing, based predominantly on Maury Terry's book, The Ultimate Evil, which came out in the late 1980s, I believe. In fact, I read the book when it came out. And he's disavowed all his work into that topic because his investigation led him to discover that Maury Terry was full of shit, and there was no Son of Sam cult, and Berkowitz operate alone. I have a lot of respect for Manny for doing that. It takes a man to admit they were wrong and had gone down the wrong path. So that's just like to make me like the guy even more. So if he's watching this video, I hope you do continue, Manny, to make videos on whatever other subjects you're interested in, whether it's the American megaliths, which is a fascinating subject, or anything else that captures your fancy, because you're a very good filmmaker and a very engaging personality. So don't feel bad about that. I did the same with the Tuam film thing. When I discovered that the Tuam story was not what I thought it was, I took the videos down. I think I took them all down, or put them on private or unlisted that I'd made on the subject. And those of you who don't know, in Tuam in County Galway, a few years ago, a story broke of there were 800. A woman had discovered there were 800 babies missing missing from the register in this mother and baby home run by nuns, an order of nuns down there. Up until the 1970s, there were 800 babies missing, and it was theorized through, I don't know, events, mainly kids finding body parts over the years, that the babies had died from neglect and bad care inside the mother and baby home, which were set up by the Catholic Church for illegitimate mothers to give birth to babies, and then they could either have the baby, but more likely the babies are put up for adoption. And I fell for the story hook, line and sinker. I went down to Tuam. I made a film on it. I was very upset. I was very in a bad way over the whole thing. I was very angry. I was very hurt by the how, you know, I was very sad for my country, Ireland, and this kind of thing. And then two things happened. A friend of mine who's an archaeologist who wasn't against the concept of the story of the babies in the septic tank showed me an excavation from the 1980s of a famine grave that took place on the site. And during the famine, they put thousands and thousands of bodies down there. So it's not difficult at all, and it's surrounded by a dreary 1970s council estate. And so it's not inconceivable that you could put a shovel in the ground anywhere in that area and dig up a body part, even if that of a child, because they were all buried in mass graves during the famine, which is a terrible historical event in this country's history. Awful. And inconceivably awful in many ways. And so that explains kids playing with human bones and finding human bones in and around where the place used to be, where the old home used to be, mother and daughter home. And then then I saw a few things, including a video by John Waters, where he said there was no evidence has come forward, and it hasn't. No evidence has come forward. There's just this one woman who's produced this list of 800 names, but of missing babies. But we don't. Anything could have happened to those kids. It could be a clerical error. I mean, we're talking about a home that processed thousands and thousands of mothers and babies. It could have been a clerical error. The names could have been changed to protect families. The babies could have been given new names and shipped off. I mean, the Catholic Church did a very lucrative business selling babies overseas. So the childless couple. So there could be numerous things there. But the thing that did it for me once is that I was watching a documentary about it, and the woman who had discovered the missing 800 names, she had this, I started to dislike her the more I watched her body language. She had this self-satisfied smugness about her, like, aren't I so clever? Now that shouldn't discount the fact that it could be true or not. But what did it for me was, and I'm not saying I don't believe it, but I'm not saying I do believe it. I'm waiting for more evidence, and there is no evidence. And this is because in the same documentary, they interviewed a guy who lives up the road here, who I've known for about 10 years, and he is a delusional fantasist. He is a Walter Mitty type. And he was all over the documentary claiming that he was in the home and he saw the babies being thrown in the septic tank and all this kind of thing. And this guy is a delusional fantasist. He had a book out, which is a load of rubbish that he published about 6 or 7 years ago, all about me, 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 me. And then he told me that when it was published, he self-published it himself, that CNN and the BBC were waiting at his house to interview him about his book, like he was Frank McCourt or something like that. You know, a big publishing deal, and he hit the big time. And it was all lies and of a delusional fantasist, like his book was. And here was that same delusional fantasist on this documentary claim he saw babies being thrown into septic tanks. So that was enough for me to take the videos off my channel. And so I know where you're coming from, Manny. I did the same myself, and it's a painful thing. It's not, especially when you have an emotional investment in it. But there you go. Regarding the Son of Sam Berkowitz serial killer thing, I was always in two minds about it. I was kind of hoping that Manny would kind of prove it, but at the same time too, I was open-minded. What did it for me was that when the book came out, I was reading it, and I was always struck by the flowery language by Maury Terry. It was the book it's called The Ultimate Evil. And I was always struck by the corny, flowery language. And I remember I was with this woman at the time, and she was asking me, "Do you like it?" And I said, "Well, it's definitely interesting. It's." But I said he writes in a kind of like cornball style now and again, and I remember this one passage where, you know, and as the bullets tore into her body, she fell upon the Bronx sidewalk like the petals from a like the petals from a spring flower. That kind of thing, and it was like that, if you have a story to tell that's factual, you don't tell it in that style. You don't have to embellish it with floweriness. So there you go, so it's part of this is for all you out there as well, you researchers and you truth seekers. A big part of being a truth seeker rather than a truther is to admit that you had your head up your arse and went down the wrong path for a while. And admit it and be straight up about it and come forward about it and say you were wrong, just like I was about Tuam, and you were wrong. And what that does then is it clears that out of the way so you can devote your head to things that can be dealt with. There you go. So that's that. That's a good. Even if you're not a researcher, a writer, a filmmaker, and you're just a regular truth seeker trying to find alternative stories, it's okay to admit you were wrong, or you were led down the garden path, or you led yourself down the garden path, which is what happens in most cases. Just like we all have a relationship we regret, we all have a passion that we devoted ourselves to that we realized was bollocks. But that's life, it's all part of learning and the journey. So that's that. Now, Alex Jones has been hit with a 950, 60 bazillion million fine by the courts over what happened at that school in Connecticut. Now, I did not believe the conspiracy theory surrounding that. Certainly not the way Alex Jones told it. I was quite shocked when I heard, and it did happen, that truthers were coming up to couples who'd lost their daughters and said, "You're a liar," or children, and said, "You're a liar. You're a crisis actor, and your child is still alive." And they reminded me of the group, the idiots going around Hampstead, "Satanic pedophile, satanic pedophile," those types, But an American version of them, the wild-eyed, arm-raising truther who believes everything, because he's seen a few videos. But now, based entirely upon the extreme nature of the fine and the award against Alex Jones, I'm now starting to think that maybe there is a lot more to that story than I had previously believed. Because that is not a lawsuit judgment. That number, $960 million or whatever it is a warning shot. It's a warning shot against anyone who investigates something that you'll be next. That if you investigate something like what happened in that school in Connecticut, in terms of it not being the official narrative, you'll be hit with lawsuits like this. Now, I do believe that those kids were killed by that guy that went in and shot the kids and the school teachers. I do believe that really happened, and it's an awful thing for the Sandy Hook families to deal with that. Horrible, beyond measure. But there was other things that worked there, I'm convinced of it. People say false flag in terms of false flag, it didn't happen. This is the biggest problem with truthers. They convinced themselves that none of it ever happened. Like there was no planes at 9/11. No, there was planes, but the story was still fucked up. The same thing with Sandy Hook. Now I'm thinking, yeah, all those kids were shot and the school teachers, but there's something not right. There's still things that don't make sense. Who was the guy in the woods? That's not, just tell us, who was the guy in the woods? We all saw that. It was just a hunter or a guy who was going for a walk. But who was that person? Never been identified. And also, I saw one video, and it was supposed to be the family members doing a press conference. And I remember a lot of kids died, so there would have been a lot of parents involved. And a lot of those parents wouldn't have known who the other parents were, And so you could have put anyone on that stage and said, "My daughter was shot." and a grieving parent or someone in the community. I don't recognize him, but how could you? There were so many kids shot, and you multiply it by two parents. That's a lot of people. And in those kind of communities, people don't really know their neighbors or anything like that. They don't. It's not like in Ireland where people tend to be very neighborly and stuff, or in parts of rural America. In Connecticut, it's very kind of money, kind of upper middle classy kind of thing. So, and reserved Yankees, that kind of thing. Your friends are the people down at the golf club or down in the tennis club or the yacht club. So there was a press conference where it looked like there were actors about to do a read through, waiting for the camera to go, action. And one of them was a blonde-haired guy with a big smirk on his face, and he's laughing with the other guys, and they're laughing. And then they go, something like, it's like someone said, "Hey, the clapperboard, action," and he goes and walks up to the microphone and talks about the murder of his daughter. Now, at the time, I've never had a tragedy like that in my life, and trying to be a decent person about it, you say to yourself, well, I don't know what the kind of grief he's going through and how people handle the horrors and griefs differently. They just do. I mean, when I was 10 years old, a bomb went around the corner from me and it killed like a load of people, over a dozen. And when it was kind of the commotion was down and I was walking home, there was a fellow that I met, and he said, and he says, "Yeah, sorry, man, a fellow with no legs, no fucking legs," and laughed. And I remember that was because he was in shock. It's how he dealt with it. And I knew another chap once. I went to see a band at the pier in New York next to the big, huge aircraft carrier, the Intrepid. And I got talking to a lad there, and he says, "Yeah, I was actually stationed on that." And on one day, a plane flew into the back. It missed the flight deck and flew into the back of the thing and killed like 70 guys. And he went, laughed like that. Like, can you believe that? That's like trauma. That's how he dealt with it. And I've seen that in other cases as well. So I was thinking to myself, well, maybe that guy stepping up to read his lines was like that. Because I'm trying to be decent and understanding and compassionate. But now the nature and the extent and the huge amount of money involved makes me now wonder if the conspiracy that Alex Jones was mentioning had some veracity to it. Now, of course, the kids were totally kids. No about that. There's tons of that. But was it set up? Was it staged? We know that the Tuam thing in Ireland had a political imperative to it, in that it was used to try and change Irish society. And many of the stories where if the government were involved properly, those kids would have never ended up in a septic tank. You could see that the trajectory was government control. Well, the same thing with the Sandy Hook thing. So now I'm starting to think that maybe something did happen at Sandy Hook. And maybe there is something maybe there was. When I said crisis acting, I don't mean that no kids or no one was shot dead. I mean, they were, but the thing was like staged somehow. Now, don't say these things don't happen. Gladio did one that was busted open by the Belgian courts in Belgium, where a bunch of people were murdered in a supermarket for political reasons, random individuals. And Gladio were almost certainly behind the 7/7 bombings in London, where a bunch of Sikhs were given explosives, probably told it was drugs, and were told to go to London and don't open these backpacks. And when you get to London, you meet a guy called Paddy or Joe or Jimmy, whatever, Sanjay, and he'll give you each two grand and just hand them the backpack entirely. And they didn't know there were bombs in them. They were patsies. And that's what I think happened in 7/7. And that had all the trademark of Gladio. And absolutely, we know what happened for a fact in Belgium. And it happened in Belgium around the time the big scandal regarding just about everyone in Belgian high society was a paedophile. There's always a political. These don't. So don't say these things don't happen. They do, they do. And Sandy Hook, to me, was just like a horrible lone shooter, mass murder thing. But with the nature and the amount of money involved in the Alex Jones thing, now I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure at all. And I've been inclined, and the reason why that money was on, that was almost like they wanted to take. I used to think for a long time, is Alex Jones real? Just waving his arms around. But I understand he's also a Texan, and an American style of delivery that in Europe we don't do things that way. We're more reserved. We tend to be. Even in cultures where we do kind of open and flamboyant, like the Irish, like the Italians, like the Spanish, like the Greeks, like that we do tend to have that about us, that kind of thing. We're still very reserved by comparison. I mean, like, English and Scottish people are quite taken by the fact how Irish people are so expressive, and we're, as George Bernard Shaw said, we're Italians trapped in the wind and rain. And there's a lot. That's absolutely 100% true, and that's how we are. And you even see that in me. But even by Irish standards, Alex Jones is way out there, way out there. But it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. So I understand that. But that was a warning shot by the establishment, by the secret unknowns, to say, if you dare to challenge us in any way, we'll assassinate you by bankrupting you. So this is a warning not only to alt media, but it's also a warning to mainstream media as well. And I think the timing has everything to do with the fact that the Pfizer rep in the European Parliament, when questioned by a very noble and brave Dutch politician named Robert Roos, yet some of them do exist, had got them to admit that the needlecraft had not been tested in terms of its ability to stop the spread of the Rona. That was a seismic moment yesterday. And this has all come about because of citizen journalism and people like all of us saying, I don't believe the official narrative. Well, I now think that Alex Jones fine award amount, a colossal amount, was done to say to everyone, you're next if you don't shut the fuck up. And that's, in some ways, it's a very good thing, because we do have them worried. We very much do have them worried. And they're definitely on the back foot now. People, they're talking about like all the people dying from the transubstantiation, the rooster booster, and boy, I say, boy, I don't think they wanted that. I really don't. I don't think they wanted this suddenly and unexpectedly. I think their main goal in terms of like, if we work really hard, we can reduce the population. And he's holding the syringe in his arm, Windows 0. I think the thing was to sterilize people. It was a classic Margaret Sanger type eugenics program, but this time the eugenics was for everyone except them, of course. It turns out Macron probably didn't take it, and neither did the others at the top. Just like Aaron Russo said when the Rockefeller said we're going to bring in something that you don't have to worry about, so don't worry about it. We'll be okay. Be okay. And he mysteriously dies afterwards as well. So that's all. I don't think they expected this. I mean, it's very easy to say, oh, they wanted to. No, that's messy. That's when you have everyone dropping dead at the same time. That cannot be hidden. That's messy. And if they turned around and said, oh, it's actually the Rona that's doing it, and then people will say, but I thought we were protected from it with this inoculation. So they can't do that one either. So I think the goal, and I was talking to a nurse in the early days of the transubstantiation, and she was saying to me, The particles are being found in the testes and the ovaries, and it's directly leading to sterilization. That was the kill shot. The kill shot was to be sterilization, and we know that the fertility rates have collapsed, all around the world from this. But that was not. But they did not want to kill them all off. They were they deliberately used it to euthanize the elderly in the homes. They would put them on ventilators and tranquilize and knock them and finish them off. That was real. That was a way of, all you have. The reason for that is quite simply money. Well, it all money, but the pensions were, and I read something once that in the last year of your life in America, they use something like 90% of the expenses they'll ever use for healthcare. So there was a financial imperative of making sure that nobody got to that final year of life. Just wiped them out quickly. And so they wouldn't have to spend money on them. And that's what they definitely took advantage of that and did it. And people who were not well anyway. That's why when they were all told in ICUs, if they come in, if they're over a certain age and they're overweight or they have asthma, put them straight on the air balloon and send them to heaven, the Aztec sun god. And but that wasn't deliberately done by the nurses and doctors. That's what they were told to do. But it wasn't put that way. But that's how it was. They were told that these people have no chance. So immediately begin the end of life treatment. And I know this is true because of a friend of mine in England, and some people have also contacted me that literally were in ICUs kicking the nurses and doctors off with the kill shots and the air balloon, literally kicking them off themselves to try and keep themselves alive, because the official policy was they're too old, too fat, or too unhealthy, or they have something like diabetes. It's best to just get rid of them, stop them from suffering. So it wasn't done out of sadistic nature. It was done out of what they believe were doing the right thing. And they're all NPCs anyway, and they're mindless without them. So you do what they're told. So now that it's all come out at just what's been done to people, and we've been vindicated, I'm not surprised that there'll be more things like the Alex Jones judgment. There'll be more things like it. But I don't think they wanted everyone dead like this. They wanted sterilization, and maybe dead over a much longer time frame, but not all the suddenly expected young people. Like I read one the other day with a woman in Liverpool, a healthy young girl, 24, dropped dead with a baby in her arms. School teachers collapsing in front. It's happening all the time now. It's happening non-stop. You all know, you all see it, and it's going to get worse when the seasonal viruses kick in after Christmas. But that's where we are now. I think they've fucked up big time, and they're messy. They're not that they're very clever. They're very devious, but because they're psychopaths, so they never cover all the bases because they get lazy at some points. That's a kind of a trait with psychos. They get lazy, and that's often at least to their undoing. But I think that's definitely what's happened at Sandy Hook is definitely has changed my mind. It's funny how I believe there was a conspiracy. I don't believe there was a conspiracy in Tuam anymore, but now I'm starting to wonder: is there one at Sandy Hook? And this is how stupid they are. They set off the red flag by their behavior. Obviously, Jones doesn't have that kind of money, and he'll never make that kind of money. But it's enough to shut him up for good. It's enough because I remember when he was on the last time he was on Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan read out a list of things that Alex Jones had called correctly, and he correctly called them all. So despite all this and all that carry on, he still was calling many things correctly over the years. So, but I think he'll continue on in his own way. But there's ways around that. But it would be incredible if he could raise that kind of money and pay them off. But yeah, that was a warning shot across the bow. Now here in Ireland, there's another a thing. It's like so NPC. It's not funny. The Irish ladies soccer team have qualified for the World Cup, and they qualified for the World Cup in Hampden Park in playing Scotland in Hamden Park's in Glasgow, I think. Yeah, Glasgow, is it? Yeah, it's in Glasgow. And they beat them 1-0, the Irish team, and they qualified for the World Cup finals. And they started singing Celtic Symphony, the players. Now, it's a stupid song. Like, it's like, it's by an Irish rebel band called the Wolf Tones, who I quite like a lot of their music, but this is the Celtic Symphony is a stupid song sung by supporters of Glasgow Celtic FC. And like all their songs, they tend to be pro IRA. And the lyrics are, it was far across the sea when the devil got a hold of me. We not free. He held my soul to ransom. La na 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 na. And then it goes in the middle. It goes and in the middle it goes ooh ah up the ra. Say ooh ah up the ra. The ra is just like slang name for the IRA. And so it's an how this started. You'd never, people in Ireland wouldn't sing that song except like dirtbags, but in Scotland, Glasgow Celtic fans have this weird thing that they're Irish for some reason. I don't know what that's all about. And the Rangers fan all think they're English. I mean, it's almost like Rangers and Celtic were created in Scotland to make sure Scotland would never be free. I don't know. I'm not going to get involved in that argument. I know very nice people who are Rangers supporters and very nice people who are Celtic supporters. So I'm not going to go there. But so anyway, the Irish media has acted like the Irish ladies soccer team has personally gone and planted bombs in cars. A stupid song about an organisation that no longer exists. I mean, and they're acting like they committed the greatest crime in history. And as a result, they've stopped these women from enjoying their great achievement of actually qualifying for the World Cup finals. And it's utterly stupid. It's utterly a non-story. But because the Irish media is entrenched within Fine Gael, within the current ruling regime in this country, who are a West Britain party, Fine Gael are anti-Irish to their core. They're basically a southern. They started out as full-blown fascists with the whole salute and everything. I'm not joking. And then they merged into a unionist, kind of a unionist party. And Garret FitzGerald, the former Prime Minister of Ireland, who wasn't a bad guy in his own way, who was their head, used to say that when he started out as a young politician, he used to canvass on, we're going to get Ireland back into the Union. That's the kind of thing. And they're heavily connected to the German Christian Democrats. In fact, they're basically a wing of them. And they're very internationalist globalists and very anti-Irish. They despise anything that's authentically Irish, Fine Gael. Even though they call themselves soldiers of the Gael. And they're West Britons. And this is why, and not everyone in the media is like, if they're not voting for the Green Party, they vote for them. Or they support them. This kind of thing, right? And so, but it's pure NPC, the whole thing. Even the NPCs don't care about this story. They don't care about it in Scotland, they don't care about it in Ireland, they don't care about it in England. They don't care. And yet the media is whipping up this story like it's the biggest thing that's ever happened. And the reason for this is the same reason that the Alex Jones $900+ million fine was handed out. It was done to hide the news coming out about what the European politician Robert Roos discovered about the transubstantiation. They're creating distractions to protect politicians. And that's it. And you know what that means for us and the tribes? We continue to be a pain in the hole. Love yous all. Sanguine Gnosis. It was far across the sea when the devil got a hold of me. He wouldn't set me free, so he held my soul to ransom. Na 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 na.